Good morning, members of council and viewing audience on YouTube. If we could just stand for a moment of silent reflection and we'll call the meeting to order. Thank you. Thank you. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll start with the corporate overview and budget summary. Mr. Langlois and Mr. Ferraro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to provide perhaps a couple of introductory comments before we pass it over to the finance team here. Certainly, 2020 has proven to be a challenging year. I'm not sure anyone on the screen here a year ago would have thought when we were going through the 2020 budget in December of 2019 that we would have to endure what we have in this current year, but we certainly have. And I think one of the testaments, I think, to our budget process that we have is that our budget does contemplate a bit of the unknown. We never know what's going to happen, but through careful and deliberate financial planning, and we're able to stick by our guiding principles that we've had within the budget for some time now, and weather many of the storms, including the COVID storm that has hit us in 2020. So again, a testament to, the budget, the past budget and budgets all the way back going decades that allows us to do that. Simple things like saving for the rainy day, having a healthy savings account, being flexible to changing circumstances, not overextending ourselves, and being true to our principles and policies are things that make things easier. And when pandemics such as COVID hits. While it might seem simple in your home in your own personal budget to go through those things, it can get complex when we're talking about balancing a municipal budget. But again, we've been able to stick to our principles and policies and have had successful budgets as we've gone through. The 2021 continues. The 2021 budget continues in providing the high level of services that the community has come to enjoy. However, it does recognize the pandemic situation that we're currently in the midst of. There are no significant new initiatives in the budget aside for those that were previously announced and approved. The planned contribution for infrastructure replacement has been reduced from the previously adopted plan of 2% per year. So we have made some reductions in those areas in consideration for financially where we are with the pandemic. Most other increases are related to inflationary or contractual increases that relate to our base budget. And the proposed 1.9% increase, again, that's on the municipal side, is less than the current rate of inflation and is relatively responsible given the levels of services that we're set to provide. We do enjoy and have been enjoying for the last number of years strong residential and commercial development as well as strong new home construction. Again, as evidenced in the very aggressive and hot real estate market here in LaSalle, for those trying to move here, again, they have seen that, again, the real estate market, because of the supply issues, has been somewhat challenging. We do have some challenges in that whole development side of things as our existing lot supply continues to be drawn down. And so that is something that we continue to deal with and try to address through this budget and future budgets. The budget was announced in November of early November 2020, some 6 weeks ago for public consultation and input. We've received very few direct comments, either directly to the municipality, to members of our staff, as well as through members of council. Comments received have been responded to and surrounds mainly questions of how the tax rate is determined and what the impact is on an individual homeowner. Generally, while discussions start somewhat negatively, obviously, once ratepayers understand how tax rates are determined, which is really based on the services we provide, as well as what needs to occur in order to reduce those tax rates in terms of consideration of those services and what folks may be willing to do away with or have less of, most conversations turn positive. They understand, again, the value proposition that we're putting forward. And while no one enjoys paying taxes, they do understand that they are willing to pay the taxes that we are proposing as part of the budget, because they don't want to see a decrease in service levels. So that's the commentary that we've received thus far. And admittedly, since in the last 4 to 6 weeks, we have not received a great deal of that. We have, again, for the 2021 budget sessions here, we have altered our normal practices. As council will note, we have issued more pre-material, if you will, to help facilitate the budget sessions. This will be our first budget session that we've ever held virtually on Zoom. And so that will be part of the challenge we've had this year. But again, kudos to the finance team led by Mr. Langlois, who is our Director of Finance, as well as Mr. Ferraro, who is our Manager of Finance, as guiding us through this process and adapting the process to the current situations. As well as thanks to the entire management team for the effort they've put forth in the 2021 budget preparation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Langlois and Mr. Ferraro for their budget presentation.
Thank you. Just a few opening comments from my end as well before we get started with the presentation. So obviously 2020 has been a wild ride this year. Throughout the year, we've purchased a lot of property along Front Road for our Small Coast Waterfront Experience project. We were committed to this project before COVID hit. It's going to be a great project. It's going to be one of a kind park, probably one of a large attraction in the region that's going to that people of all ages and abilities will be able to enjoy at no cost. It'll also help businesses along Front Road, help keep existing businesses in business, help revitalize Front Road, and then probably create even higher demand along Front Road and spur development where there is ability to do so. So that's a great project. This budget continues with the plan to move forward with the Front Road project. And then early in the year when COVID hit, it's taken its toll. The hardest hit area of the town's been the Vollmer Center and the interest earned on our bank accounts once the prime rate was reduced. That makes up a very large portion of our budget. A lot of folks, I hear comments, why don't you just shut the Vollmer down? It just doesn't work like that. You have to keep it operating and maintained. You can't just drain the pool. The seals, the liner will crack. You can't just shut down the arenas. It conditions the air. If you shut down the arenas for that long of a period of time, the equipment will seize, and the ultimate cost to replace it will be much more money than the revenue that we lost. We're very thankful from the province of Ontario. We received $695,000 as phase 1 funding, which has definitely been a huge help with our funds. And then we've also applied for phase 2 funding, and we're hoping to receive approximately $200,000 for that. Lastly, before I get started with the presentation, this is a bare bones budget. There's really not many service levels included. The 2 main service levels are continuing to build our plan to redevelop Front Road, and then also continue to increase our funding to put away for capital projects. Again, since I've been here 10 years, even though there's not many new services included in this budget, this has definitely been the most difficult budget that I've had to put forward with council. It's very difficult after years of increasing our service levels and continuing to increase, and then we have an unexpected event like COVID hit us. It's just been very difficult. And as part of that, I'd like to thank all the departments and everyone involved. At the beginning of the budget process, we talked about we're not going to increase service levels this year, just in order to keep the tax rate increase less than inflation. And all the departments accepted that and put forward very reasonable reasonable budgets. Last, I wanted to thank Mr. Ferraro and Mrs. Hadre for the video presentation that they put together for us. Just a kind of pre-budget video that outlines many of the challenges that we face here in the town of LaSalle in creating the budget process. So I'll start the slideshow now. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So first off, there's two slides that I like to show at the beginning of the budget presentation. This is this part of the survey that was performed when we did our service delivery review a couple years ago. I think there was approximately 1,000 residents who were surveyed, which is a very representative sample of 32,000. I think a true representative sample would be anything over 400 people. So this is very representative. The first question is, how would you rate your quality of life in LaSalle? Less than 1% rated as poor or very poor. Everyone else, you can see that the numbers speak for themselves. It's a great place to live. Second, how satisfied are you with the overall level of public services provided to you by the town of LaSalle? Again, less than 4% are dissatisfied or very dissatisfied, which is great numbers. So sometimes, you know, I live in the town of LaSalle and I hear a lot of comments from the public and concerns and whatnot. Typically, the more negative comments are voiced. Positive comments are voiced less because people are happy with their services. So I always keep that in mind and don't let it get to me too much when I do hear those comments. But when I do, I like to sit down with people and explain and why everything is what it is and why we need to continue to increase our funding in certain areas that they may not disagree with. So next, just the agenda for this presentation. So first, we're going to go through the budget history and process of creating the budget, how we've maintained a 0% tax rate change over the past 2 years, our annual capital reserve contribution progress and status. I know about 4 years ago, we came up with a plan to allocate 2% of our tax rate each year to build up that reserve, and we're going to see the progress there. It's a good success story. Next, we'll talk about our growth. And then last, we're going to talk about debt. The next area, we're going to go through the high-level summary of the 2021 proposed operating budget and breakdown of budget components. And then Mr. Ferraro is going to walk us through the departmental budgets, starting with the operating budget for each department, followed by the capital budget for each department. And then last, we'll just conclude what we've talked about and summarize it. So the first slide here is just a little bit of history on what has made up our levy increases over the years. So the orange color is the increase or decrease from assessment on existing properties. The gray color is from a tax rate increase, and the blue is from growth, the levy increase from growth from new construction. So this year is kind of a unique year. MPAC announced earlier in the year, just because of COVID, they are going to keep the value of all properties in the town the exact same as the value that they were in 2020. So if you for tax purposes, your property was valued at $400,000 in 2020, it's going to be valued at $400,000 in 2021. So typically when that happens, like a resident or business's bills based on two factors. It's based on the tax rate change, and which is multiplied by the value of property. So if the value of your property increases, that contributes more money to the levy. And then also, as we increase our tax rate, that also contributes more money. It's the value of the property times the tax rate. So if the value of residents' property doesn't go up, we need to increase our levy for various reasons that you'll see throughout the presentation. We need to increase our tax rate. So if you add the orange color and the gray color together, that's the average, that's the increase on the average property tax bill. So as you can see through the history, there's actually some negative balances in 2009 and 2013. Those were reassessment years where we were in more of recession times. The real estate market was not hot. The value of a lot of houses actually went down. And when values go down in a reassessment year, it's decreased all in the first year. That's why you'll see negative amounts. Any increases in value are spread out evenly over 4 years. So that's why you see a negative number in those years. So if you look at 2021 and add the gray and the orange figures, that's the average property tax bill increase. The average property tax bill increase in 2021 is going to be, as the last time it was that low was in 2013. So we have definitely put a lot of, this kind of shows that we put a lot of efforts forward to minimize any increases in the levy other than areas that we feel that we need to continue to move forward. Again, if there's any questions at any point in time throughout the presentation, please feel free to let me know. Oh, as well, you can see in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, once the real estate market got hot and more growth starting to happen, there are several initiatives that began in those years. So just to name a few of the larger ones, in 2017, we started our capital replacement buildup. That's the 2% per year that we've allocated to increase that. And you'll see the importance of that in some future slides. We also started our fire master plan buildup of approximately $200,000 a year. And as well our strategic plan buildup. So that's just a few of the plans that we started in those years. So next, how did the town of LaSalle over the past 2 years keep the tax rate change at zero? So there's 4 main factors. The first, assessment increase from new construction, growth. As Mr. Militia mentioned, there's been a lot of growth in the town of LaSalle over the past few years and in the region. The real estate market's gone very hot and we've had very high demand. So where there's the ability to build, building has started. Next, assessment increase on existing properties. From the last slide, that's what I talked about, the increase in value on existing homes. Every 4 years, MPAC reassesses, and any increase in value is factored in gradually over 4 years. Again, in 2021, the value, that's not going to occur. That's a big challenge for us. That's not going to occur. It's going to stay the exact same as it was in 2020. The third factor, new sources of revenue or increases in existing sources of revenue. So for example, the OCIF funding year over year, that was built up. In 2017, we received $330,000 a year. In 2018, it was increased to $469,000. And for 2019 and 2020, it was increased to $739,000. So that is now leveled off. It's actually decreased. For 2021, it's decreasing by $13,000. It is a formula-based fund, which we can't control. So it is slightly decreasing. So we aren't experiencing those large increases anymore, which helps with our bottom line. Interest revenue from interest rate increases and increases in our reserve balances, that's also been a factor. Over the last number of years, there's been the interest rate has continued to increase year over year, which has helped drastically with the bottom line of our budget. This year, again, when COVID hit, the federal government, just to help our economy, drastically reduced the prime rate. So how our interest rate works in our bank account, that follows suit. So that unexpectedly went down significantly and has cost us probably $400,000 to $500,000. So that's another uncontrollable factor, which is a huge challenge for this year. The next factor is the increase in the supplemental levy revenue. Years ago, we were actually drawing that down as we were running out of build-ready lots in the town of LaSalle. In 2019, it was budgeted at $195,000 a year. So as we've been experiencing more growth in the town of LaSalle, and there are some building lots available right now that we're trying to get more online and see what happens, but we are running lower on those right now. So in 2020, the budget was increased to $455,000, and we've increased it again for 2021 to $610,000. But moving forward, we are tapped out at this point in time. We cannot increase that revenue budget line much more until some major building lots become available. Otherwise, we will not be able to meet our budget. And number 4 is the constant monitoring of expenses and reducing where possible. Mr. Ferraro and the various departments constantly monitor our budget to actuals. And, you know, when there's years where there's a couple years in a row where we've been lower than our budget, we will reduce the budget for those expenses. We don't want to pad our budget. If we're successful at reducing expenditures, we're going to reduce our budget, and we're always looking at ways to save money. So those are the main areas that have allowed us to have a 0% tax rate increase over the past 2 years. So next, this is a new slide. I haven't presented this one in the past, but it's a very important slide. There's a lot going on. It looks very busy, but it is a very important slide. So basically, the blue color is, if we go back to 2015, our asset management plan, the blue color is the cost to replace all of our assets that we need to put away each year to replace our assets. That's the cost. That's the number that we need to put away each year to successfully be fully funded and replace all of our assets. The purple color, that's new assets included in the calculation that we hadn't had in our asset management plan before. We put trees in there because eventually, believe it or not, we actually need to replace our trees as they get too big and die and whatnot. That's a small factor. The other factor is drainage, the town's portion of the drainage costs. So we need to factor that in, because as we, even under the Drainage Act, as drains need to be replaced, the town is responsible for a portion of that cost. So we factor that into our asset management plan now. The orange color is assets that we've purchased since that point in time. A big example is the marina on Front Road. That'll eventually need to be replaced, and then other assets as well. The green, it says assets donated to the town, but what that really is when a subdivision has been completed by the developer, the town now owns that cost, and we eventually need to put money away, and we'll eventually have to replace those roads and pipes in the ground and everything, all the infrastructure that goes along with that. So that number will always continue to build. These numbers will continue to increase over time. The red is the big one. That's the cost of inflation. And that's a really big number, and it's accurate. You know, the costs, the demand around here has went up significantly. If you look at mill and pave, I think there's 2 providers in the city, high demand happening. And as a result, when there's high demand, prices increase. So that number will always continue to grow. Inflation will always happen. And this, unfortunately, with infrastructure, inflation is typically around 2%. With infrastructure, I think it's been over 5% a year for the last number of years. So that's increasing rapidly. So the bright yellow line that runs through it, that's our annual capital contribution. So when we came up with the capital plan that recommended putting 2% tax rate a year away for capital contribution, that started right in 2016. So if you look at 2016, I call it the infrastructure gap, funding gap. It's about $8.5 million. From the top of the red to the yellow line's about $8.5 million. So at that point in time, we began putting away at minimum 2% tax rate increase, which was about $600,000 at the time, a year away, plus any funding, that OSIF funding that we received that kept growing. We put that towards that, and any other funding that became available, we put away to our annual allocation for capital replacement. You can see that numbers increase drastically, which is a good news story. But the bad news part of it is the inflation and all those other increases that have went along with it at the same time. That gap is narrowing. Like if you look, if there was no growth in the town and all the costs stayed the exact same, we'd be pretty close to fully funded with the money that we've put away. But because we're always going to continue to grow, we're always going to have new assets come on, and there's always going to be inflation. The cost is always going to increase. That gap is narrowing. Instead of $8.8 million in 2016, right now it's 8.1. So we've narrowed it by about $1 million, which is very impressive. We're doing a lot here in the town of LaSalle to narrow that. But this just shows if we don't continue to increase that funding with the rate of inflation, the way things are going around here, that gap's going to get big again. We gotta keep up with it. And in the future, we're in January, I'm hoping to come with a detailed report to council with our next plan over the next 5 years. But the 2% now, 2% in 2016 was $600,000, 2% now $750,000. So it's very important that we continue to put money away so that we don't get in trouble and we have enough money when assets reach the end of their useful life to replace them. So shows the progress that we've made over the years. So next, just want to talk a little bit about growth. So I often hear comments when I'm talking to my friends and residents in the town of LaSalle. Hey, we have so much growth going on around here. How come it doesn't go to the bottom line? We shouldn't have any tax rate increase whatsoever because we have so much growth. That would be great, but we always have to remember, as there's more subdivisions being built, there's more costs to the town. If you look at the last slide, that green item, we eventually, the green portion of the graph, we eventually need to replace the infrastructure that we receive. That those residents start paying their property taxes, but some of that money has to go to replacing the infrastructure that's in front of their house. Then there's all the other costs that go along as well. Right away, there's additional garbage pickup and disposal costs. There's additional salt and snow, eventually the snow plow routes. As we get larger, we need to buy more plows and have additional routes. As we grow again, it might not be a straight line increasing. It could look more like stairs, but eventually we need more police and fire resources and public works staff. We hit a breaking point where we just need to hire more staff eventually. Like I said, the additional contribution to capital and reserves for the replacement of the infrastructure, additional parks to maintain in the neighborhoods. As there's more neighborhoods built, there's always a neighborhood park. So we need to inspect and maintain that equipment, cut the grass. And then there's higher demand for programming. More people are going to use the Vollmer Center. So there's going to be higher demand for programs, higher use at the arenas and whatnot as we continue to grow. It's all gradual, but eventually it does hit a point where we need to expand things. So growth, although it'd be nice to say it goes straight to the bottom line, it doesn't. Then next, this is a important topic, debt. I hear it all the time. I see different municipalities all over the place advertise, hey, we're not issuing debt. It's a great thing. Debt is not a bad thing if you use it properly. Currently, the interest rate on debt is at historically low levels. It's at 2.27% for a 25-year loan. That's locked in for 25 years. It's not like a mortgage where you have to renew it every 4 or 5 years. That's locked in for the life of the project. Some benefits of debt: it allows municipalities to perform large projects at once without draining their reserves. Second, it spreads out the cost to future taxpayers who will enjoy the project. A perfect example is the waterfront project. The residents who've lived here for 20 years haven't had the experience to enjoy what is going to be created. We issue debt, future generations pay that debt, and they're going to be able to enjoy that park. So that's kind of our strategy. That's our philosophy. We typically don't issue debt for replacement of existing infrastructure because hopefully we've been building up the reserves already to replace that. And current residents have had the luxury of enjoying the benefits of that infrastructure. But for future infrastructure, we issue debt for large projects, and because the future is going to be who benefits from the projects. So that's our philosophy on debt. We got to be careful. We don't want to issue too much, but we do have a healthy ratio, debt to equity ratio here at the town of LaSalle. So next, we're going to get into this year's actual numbers for our budget. The proposed change in the levies, $1.7 million. So there's 4 quadrants that make that up. I'll go through them in more detail. This just kind of puts it all on one page. We have our inflationary pressures, which is made up of our wages and benefits on existing staff, our operations costs, our capital contribution on existing capital. This doesn't include the additional buildup. And then our revenue. There's different sources of revenue that will increase as well. We have our police services budget. We have our long-term capital. That's the 2% a year. This year, it's less than 1%, but it's a unique year. We're trying to keep the rate low, so we've cut that in half. And then we have our growth and service level increases, which I'll go through in detail. Right now, a 1% change in the tax rate is $377,000, which equals $9.85 for every $100,000 of assessment. So we'll go through each quadrant in a little bit more detail. First, we're going to go through the inflationary changes. I put the changes in 2021 and 2020 up there just so I can show you different areas and last year that we were able to put in or different sources of revenue so that we could keep the tax rate at 0 that we can't this year. We just can't do it. So I'll go through each. Wages and benefit, the first number, the 2021 does look higher. That is actually the reason it looks higher. There is a reallocation for some of the positions that were approved in the 2021 that were approved in the 2021 budget through service level increases that are now included in the department. So that's not quite inflation. It's just the positions, for example, the legal paralegal assistant. That's a perfect example of a position that's now included in the budget. So I've included it under inflationary because we already factored it in as service level increase in prior year budgets. We have our inflation on existing capital contributions. So like I said, what we've been putting away that a couple slides ago, that big red number, the inflation, this is hopefully helping us keep up with inflation. You know, I think we put 2% in. And like I said, it is probably going up higher than 5% a year right now, just because of the demand and supply. But we've lowered that increase compared to last year. Garbage collection disposal, that's a combination of growth and increase in costs. It is what it is. We can't control that cost. The Vollmer building and equipment maintenance, you know, the Vollmer is over 10 years, I think it's 12 years old now. And as we've seen the past number of years, the maintenance costs and a lot of the equipment's reached the end of its life. So if it's broken, we need to fix it. Councillor Akpata?
Mr. Langlois, I had an email from a resident about garbage. Can you expand on that a little bit, sir? I think the resident might be watching, and I believe that you'd be able to. You're just expand on that number, sir, please.
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned a couple slides ago, as new subdivisions are built. Well, actually, there's another factor as well that contributes to it this year that's kind of unique. But as subdivisions are built, that's more houses that have garbage. So the collection and disposal fees, we have to pick up the garbage for those houses. So the cost goes up to the town. So if we have 250 additional houses that are now being occupied and lived in, plus everyone else who lived here in 2020, that cost is going to go up because we have to pick up their garbage. There's going to be more weight in the garbage truck when we dispose of it. So we're going to be charged more costs. Another unique factor, which kind of goes along with water, a lot of people working from home now with the COVID crisis. And we've found with water usage, and then I'm also, this is an assumption, but I'm assuming people that may have worked in Windsor and thrown out garbage in Windsor during the day while they're working there, they're now at home. People are consuming more at their house. People are not going out as much. They're buying more product for things to do at home. There is that's also contributing to the garbage collection disposal. With water, the usage of water, not just in LaSalle, all over the place, it has went up drastically from people working from home. So that's another factor as well. Does that answer your question, Council?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
So then moving on, I talked about Vollmer building and equipment maintenance, and then just other inflationary increases, just, you know, $100 here, $100 there for just costs increases where we've been slightly higher than budget for multiple years. We need to play catch up. That's just over time, prices go up. Next, police services. So there really is not many increases under police services. The wages and benefits, that's not any new position. That's existing positions. And then there's the increase in capital contributions. What that is made up of, you can see in the 2020 budget, there's a reduction. So in 2021, typically police purchases 2 new vehicles or replaces 2 vehicles per year. Last year, in order to help reduce their budget, they replaced 1. This year, they're adding back for the replacement, so they can replace 2 vehicles, and they're also building up for the next generation 911 capital cost. So they're increasing their contribution to help fund that initiative, which is a legislative requirement over the next couple of years. Other changes, $1,000 in inflationary changes, which isn't much. Next, long-term capital. Again, in 2020, we increased that by $600,000. We've cut that in half for this year, just to help us get over the hump with COVID and help as much as possible relieve the pressure on tax rates. I did not want to put that at 0 because, as you saw in the graph on our progress, we'd actually be taking a step back, and that gap would increase. It would not. We're hoping that the gap just kind of stays level over the next year. We do not want that gap to increase at all. So we have reduced that for this year only. We're going to hopefully for next year in the 2022 budget be able to increase that again to our 2% a year rate. Next, growth and service level increases. So as I mentioned, before we started the budget process, we asked our departments not to put forward any or very minimal service level increases other than items that we've been committed to. So in the 2020 budget, you can see we had $785,000 of new service levels. And we've drastically reduced that. Our master plan buildup, which is currently being used to help fund the Front Road initiative, we've cut that almost in half. We really, if we're going to move forward with that project, we cannot reduce that number. The fire master plan buildup we've committed to a couple years ago. For I think it's a 10-year period, we're going to increase our budget annually by $200,000. That's important. That's health and safety related for our residents. So we're sticking with that plan. Other than that, we have not increased. We always increase our accessibility funding buildup, our strategic plan funding buildup, our emergency management training program. That was a one-off last year. Our alley closing program, and then just other miscellaneous service level increases. There's a couple. One that makes up the most of it is our tree trimming program. You know, we had an initiative to plant trees over the past number of years, and as they continue to grow, now we need to start maintaining them. They're getting big and overhanging property lines and the road and whatnot. So we need to start putting money away to maintain those trees. But other than that, well, you'll see as we move through the budget, there really isn't many service level increases. The last is the increase in the supplemental levy. As I mentioned, we've been increasing that year over year. We've had some strong growth and construction happening around town, but we're at the maximum. At this point, we cannot increase that number any further. So in summary, just taking all the last couple slides and look at them all together, what makes up our $1.7 million, the inflationary changes, our police service changes, our long-term capital changes, and our service level and growth related changes. That makes up our $1.7 million. And then our funding sources, our levy increase carry forward, there is a reduction in the multi-residential tax ratio. So what that is existing condo buildings. Right now they're close to a 2-to-1 ratio compared to our residential tax rate. So over a 4-year period, that's going to be reduced to eventually hit a 1.1-to-1 ratio. So this is year one. We don't, compared to some of the other municipalities, we don't have a lot of the multi-residential and condo buildings here. So it is a minimal impact. Then we have the levy increase from new construction, the growth that we've talked about. And then the next line, if you look at 2020, that's the increase from reassessment on existing properties, that the property values are staying the exact same in 2021 as 2020. So there's zero funding from that. So we have to make up for that with the tax rate change. We want to compare the average tax bill, you look at those two line items together. The average levy funding from the average tax bill last year is 1.3 million. This year it's $734,000. So you can see the large reduction that we've had compared to prior years. So with that, I'm going to turn over the more detailed departmental budgets to Mr. Ferraro. Is there any questions before we move forward with that? Oh, Councillor Carrick.
Yeah, thank you. Dale, I just wanted to touch on again the levy increase from reassessment in existing properties. Basically, this year is 0, and last year was 1.3 million. So, expand a little bit more about what we're facing for next year's challenge too, if we stay the same, because I think it's important to relate it to this budget in the summary, because next year's challenge is going to be just as difficult, providing what's going on, and then the impact. Hopefully, the pandemic gets under control with the vaccines and everything, but that's a long way away. So can you just relate it to what's going to be happening for next budget session as well? Just the importance of how much of a loss that is to us?
Absolutely. So at this point, so typically it's every 4 years, there's reassessment on existing properties. At this point, I actually contacted our MPAC representative yesterday to find out what the plan is. Is it going to be cut down to growth over a 3-year period? Is it still going to be over a 4-year period and starting in 2022? At this point, it is unknown. There's been nothing announced by the minister. There's no clues whatsoever. So it could, if the financial burden continues well into 2021, they could hold the values the same again going into 2022. At this point, we're not sure. But we have continuous communication, and as soon as we do find out, we are going to do a report for council and a presentation. We're also going to advertise on our social media pages, our website. We're going to create some videos. Hopefully MPAC provides some videos as well, but we'll do a short video similar to the one that Mr. Ferraro and Mrs. Hodre created for the budget. We're going to do some of those educational videos for the public, just to get everyone to understand, because I know the big concern here is the value of property since the last reassessment 4 years ago has went up drastically. So, a lot of houses have went up 50 to 70% in value. So if you divide, just for example, 50% divided by 4, that's 12.5% a year. We're going to reduce, if that does happen, we will reduce the tax rate to offset it. Where the concern for some residents may be, it's all relative. If your house goes up a lot more in value than your neighbor's, whose house also went up in value, your overall property tax paid will be different from each other. It's not consistent because the increase in different property values are not consistent as well. But as we find out further information, we will definitely let our council know right away, and we're gonna create a whole program to educate our residents.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Mr. Ferrero.
Good morning, Mayor, members of council. I will take us through the different operating departments and their budgets and the capital budgets. And anytime there's any questions, please let me know. We'll begin with the police services operating budget. As Mr. Langlois indicated just a few slides ago, he mentioned the inflationary changes that we're facing in the police services budget, totaling approximately $340,000. The overall police budget is approximately $8 million, representing close to 20% of the town's operating budget. And the details on this budget can be found on Appendix 1 within our budget book. Moving forward on the police services capital budget, in comparison to the overall budget, it is smaller. It represents 2 patrol vehicles, which fall into the category of replacement and repair. In previous budget, they replaced 1 vehicle, and now back to replacing 2 vehicles planned for 2021. The mayor and council operating budget totals approximately $450,000. The increase year over year is represented by inflationary changes, salary and wage benefit changes. The details for this budget and further information is provided on page 75 of our budget document. As you can see, the overall budget for this area represents approximately 1% or less than 1% of our budget. Corporate revenue within the operating budget totals 4.9 million, or almost $5 million for 2021, an increase of approximately $196,000. This increase is represented by the supplementary levy increase. As Mr. Langlois described, it has been increasing year over year for the last few years. The corporate revenue is, as I mentioned, almost $5 million and 8% of the operating budget. Other sources of revenue include departmental revenue at 10%, water and wastewater revenue, and of course, our taxation levy revenue, which represents the majority of our operating revenue for the town. The details for this department or this corporate revenue can be found on page 85 of our budget book. Finance administration. The year-over-year change is represented by contractual wage and salary increases, as well as the mid-year increase, new position of the paralegal position hired in 2020. We have offset these increases by finding some changes or decreases in our miscellaneous expense line, as well as increasing our departmental revenues to offset those increases. So overall, $1.8 million budget for 2021. The details for finance administration can be found on page 97. And this department includes the CAO, communications, finance, and our legal staff. The Division of IT is represented on this page. Again, a smaller budget of $1 million, a small increase year over year, represented by wage and salary increases that are contractual, offset by various minor increases and decreases in the operating budget wherever possible. We attempted to find some savings. The details can be found on page 97 as well. IT is responsible for the IT services, behind the scenes infrastructure. This department has become front and center during our move to virtual meetings and remote workplace. So certainly the behind the scenes infrastructure that's in place has allowed us to continue operating the town in a virtual manner. So again, a $1 million budget for the Division of IT for 2021 is proposed. The financial services area represents a large portion of our town operating budget at approximately $13.8 million. This is 32% of the operating budget. This department or area is predominantly made up of debt payments and our transfers to reserves for items of a capital nature and deferred revenue and excuse me. The increases this year are represented by the increase in the capital reserve contribution of $300,000 that we have heard was in the past $600,000. So this amount has been decreased. Furthermore, the master plan annual buildup is at 210,000 of the service level change. The inflationary changes is a negative balance as various expenses have been reallocated to other operating departments, and overall, this has a no net effect on the operating budget. The finance and admin capital budget is represented by an annual IT allocation to capital of $162,000. This amount is raised annually by 2% to continue with the pace of inflation. Basically, this annual allocation is spent on items such as hardware, desktops, infrastructures, servers, and networking equipment. It represents a very small portion of our overall capital budget. The capital services operating budget can be found on page 113 within our budget book. The department is comprised of the council services area and the human resource department. The majority of the increase in the budget is represented by inflationary changes related to contractual and salary increases, as well as a reallocation from our corporate accounts. The service level changes are represented by increase in corporate human resource training, as well as a paperless Laserfish workflow license agreement. Again, this area represents 1.3 million of the operating budget, which is approximately 3%. We have a question, Mr. Reno?
Yeah, just really quickly, that Laserfish license, is that new to us this year, or was that an increase in the cost of the license?
This is a new initiative that we're planning for 2021 within the departments, so the costs are new. It is intended to remove some paper-related workflow and make it a paperless environment. So while we do have Laserfish, this is a new initiative that we are undertaking for 2021.
Thank you.
Mr. Farrell, at this point, if council would like, we could take a 10-minute recess just to freshen our glasses and use the facilities, if council would like, or we could keep going on.
I can't see everyone, Dale, so if you can, what's council's pleasure? Keep going. I see Jeff saying keep going. Everybody good with that? Okay, we'll keep going, Dale. Unless you want a break, you need a break.
No, we're okay to keep going.
Okay.
Counselor, did that answer your question, or is there anything further on that item?
It has. Thank you, Tono.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the council services capital budget. The proposed 2021 council services capital budget is represented by two items. Again, the software actual capital purchase, whereas in the operating budget, it was the actual annual licensing costs, and as well as a corporate or various human resource initiatives within the human resource department. Again, both of these are represented as enhancements in the current year of our capital budget. Details can be found on page 117 of the proposed budget. The development and strategic initiatives operating budget, the details can be found on page 128. It is comprised of the DSI area as well as the building area. The inflationary changes of $16,000 relate to existing staff wage and benefit contractual increases, as well as we found some increases in revenue to offset those increases. Also, the building department is represented within this department, and building does not impact the tax rate. Surplus or deficits are transferred to the building reserve on a quarterly basis. We do have wages and benefits as increasing slightly, similar to other departments. However, just to note, the reserve is currently in a positive position at approximately $470,000 as of November 30th of this year. As recent as a few years ago, this reserve was in a negative balance of over $1 million. So certainly a significant improvement in the building, and the revenues that are coming in through the building department has led to this change into a surplus position of the building reserve. The public works operating budget is our largest operating budget and is divided into segments. We'll start with the corporate segment of public works. Details can be found on page 142. The change in the operating budget year over year from 700,000 to 892 is represented by a reallocation from our financial services area, the net impact, which is zero, as well as some minor inflationary and contractual increases that are occurring in this area. So an overall budget of 892,000, predominantly a result of the reallocation with net zero impact, as well as a minor increase in wages and salaries as respective inflation and contractual increases. Within public works, our other operating department is parks. Further details on page 142. Again, minor changes in this area, inflation of $18,700, as well as the service level change that was described earlier, $25,000 in the operating budget for tree maintenance buildup, that is trimming the trees and installing or planting, additional trees within the community. So a minor change year over year within the Parks Department is being proposed. Fleet and facilities is another area within Public Works. It has a $4.5 million budget proposed for 2021 with details on page 142 also. This department represents about 13% of the overall budget. There is some increases in wages and benefits, as well as some increases with respect to equipment maintenance in both the arena and the aquatic area. Again, this department, typically you'll find expenses related to building maintenance for all of our facilities. Hydro expenses are all contained within this area. So certainly a significant budget, or part of the budget of the town, representing 13%. But as you can see, some very minor changes year over year being proposed, all of them inflationary changes. The roads department within the 2021 budget is actually seeing a proposed decrease slightly. There was wages and benefits increases, but these have been offset by going through a line by line review and decreasing our miscellaneous expense line to offset those increases. So this is one example where we went through and found some savings to offset the wage and benefit salary contractual increases. Again, $1.3 million for the roads operating department is proposed for 2021, essentially no change from the prior year. Drainage is another department within Public Works or area. Again, a very minor change year over year, simply relating to contractual wage and salary increases. And it totals less than $500,000 for the proposed 2021 operating budget. Another smaller section of our operating budget is the storm sewer budget. And again, as you can see within the picture, what the storm sewers are, I think we're all well aware of what they are responsible for. And this proposed budget is $141,000 of our overall operating budget. Very little increase year over year. Next, we'll discuss water and wastewater operating budgets. These budgets have zero effect on the tax rate, as they fund themselves, both water and wastewater, through the billings that we provide here at the town. We provide those billings, and the area funds itself. The inflationary changes, or the changes that we have here, basically are a result of the cost of water that we have to pay for WUC towards the annual increase. Water rates and wastewater rates will be discussed on the next few slides. So we are proposing raising the revenue to offset the increase in the water costs. Details can be found on page 144 for both water and wastewater. So again, we'll discuss the revenue rates on the next slides. And the overall budget is rising slightly, but again, zero effect to the overall town budget. So we'll move on to the next slide and discuss the rates that are being proposed for water and wastewater for 2021. On this chart, we have the 2020 user rates on the left and the proposed user rates for 2021 in the middle, and the change outline on the right. So the quarterly water main replacement charge is being planned or proposed to increase $1.50 per month. This change is being proposed to meet the capital plan needs of the water and wastewater. Furthermore, again, on the wastewater capital charge, $1.50 a month increase is being proposed. With respect to consumption rates, we are proposing less than 2% increase, as you can see, from $1.10 to $1.12 for the first segment of consumption, up to 81 cubic meters would pay a price of $1.12. This is less than 2% increase. And then as the consumption increases, the cost of water does increase as well. And again, each of those is less than 2% increase year over year. On the next slide, a town typically takes part in a comparison with our regional neighbors on the price of water and wastewater. As you can see, as has occurred in many years, last few years, the town of LaSalle is on the very low end of charges with respect to water and wastewater. In 2020, the town was the second lowest community in the region on the cost for a home using 240 cubic meters of water annually. The cost would be approximately just over $800. And again, Kingsville tends to be the only municipality with lower water or wastewater costs than the town of LaSalle. With the proposed increases that you see on the previous slide, the town of LaSalle, should we adopt those changes, would still remain as the second lowest municipality with respect to water and wastewater charges. So that is, if every other municipality in the region maintained their rates exactly the same as last year, and we increased ours based on the proposed amounts of less than 2% per cubic meter, we would still remain as the second lowest in the region with respect to water and wastewater charges. If there's no questions, we'll move on to the capital budget. The capital budget for public works takes up a few slides. It is quite large. Rather than go through each line in detail, I'll highlight a few of the larger capital projects being proposed. The details can be found within the budget book with an explanation on each project. And the summary page within the budget book can be found on page 157 to 159. So one of the categories we have for capital is the previously approved capital. So items that were approved in previous years that have just started or are beginning to start or in the new year. So some of these larger projects include the detailed design of Malden Road, an interesting and exciting project at the Vollmer station, which is the vehicle charging for electric vehicles at the Vollmer, is actually very close to beginning it this year. And as recently, we ordered a ice resurfacer for the Vollmer ice rinks, which was approved and is previously approved last year. So again, some other minor items on here include a golf cart and a medium dump truck. So in total, this represents $4 million of our capital budget this year. Mr. Akpata, Councilor Akpata.
Thank you, sir. Through your worship, could you expand on Lou Romano's sewage treatment capacity? I had a question from a resident just to clarify that.
I can take that one. So basically, I think in 2006 or 2007, there was a large expansion to the Lou Romano plant, and the town of LaSalle, we paid, I forget, I think we can have 5 million gallons a day treated. So we, at this point, we are not near that capacity. That's the average daily amount. Basically, it was a growth-related project that's going to bring us well into the future and make sure that we can have our sewage treated. At that point in time, there was it was funded in two ways. It was funded through some debt issuance. The annual debt payments are paid with our development charges because growth pays for growth, and that's growth related. And then the portion that the other portion was funded internally, and we've been drawing that down over the years. So this is the remaining balance that's been funded internally that we continue to draw down. So it's not really a new action per se, a new tangible capital asset. It's just the internally funded amount that we're drawing down as we continue to increase our contribution to our wastewater capital reserve account.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
So we'll move on to the next segment of the capital budget, sorry, and that is the annual allocation. So we've, as I mentioned, separated these into categories. The annual capital allocation includes the pedestrian safety annual allocation, as well as the mill and pave and enhanced mill and pave road paving allocations. So each year these items are allocated, and then the work is undertaken in the following year. Obviously, in 2021, roads are repaved and resurfaced. So again, this is very little change year over year. It's the three items, and the amounts have increased to $750,000 for mill and pave and enhanced mill and pave.
If I could just interject for a quick second. In previous years, for the mill and pave annual allocation and the enhanced mill and pave annual allocation has been $500,000. We've been able to increase the amount. This is part of that 2% extra increase year over year that we put forward as part of our capital plan. This is just an example of one of the areas that we're experiencing where we can do a little bit more with what we've been putting away. And mill and pave is a huge portion of roads maintenance. It's not a full reconstruction, but by mill and paving, different roads that are starting to experience wear and tear and cracks and whatnot, when you if you mill and pave them early enough, it drastically extends the life of those assets. So that's a huge part of our asset management plan, and just an example that I wanted to provide council with.
We have a question, Councilor Reno?
Yes, yes, thank you. Could we just get a little breakdown of the difference between mill and pave and enhanced mill and pave, and why that wouldn't necessarily be just combined into a 1.5 line item?
Peter, would you like to chime in on that? I could answer it, but you might be able to get a little bit more specific.
Certainly. Thank you for the question. Certainly, when we were developing a number of these situations over the past few years, we had what we called traditionally always just a lump sum of a mill and pave. We were running into issues with dealing with the repairs of some of the major sections of roads. There was sections of curb that had to be done. There was things of that nature. We really didn't have a budget set up to cover things such as curb replacement and repairs. I think if I recall correctly, out on Dalton and in some of those areas off of Todd Lane, we did some curb repairs, and we really wanted to make sure that we were allocating and or wording the funding appropriately. So what we did was we kind of broke it out into two separate sections for basically mill and pave, which is solely shave off the top layer of asphalt, replace the top layer of asphalt. The enhanced mill and pave gives us a bit more flexibility in terms of replacing and repairing curb, replacing and doing some base repairs with respect to the underlying stone and things of that nature to repair the foundation for the road and try to extend some of that. So that is really why we kind of separated it out into two separate categories. But It doesn't preclude us from using the enhanced mill and pave for solely shave and pave type of situations, but we just kind of broke it out a little bit separately with the two dedicated names.
That's perfect and appreciated. Thank you, Peter.
Another question, Councillor Desarlais?
Thank you. Just a quick question, and maybe I'm moving forward. We talked about previously approved picnic tables for $3,000. And then this year's budget, we have $7,000 shown on page 163. So does that mean we're doing a total of $10,000 for picnic tables?
That is correct. That is what's being proposed.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll move on to the replacement and repair category of our capital budget. Typically, the largest category within our capital budget is the replacement and repair. As you can see on this list here on this page, a number of items at the Vollmer requiring repair, floor tile, which has been done over a couple of years, and we'll continue to do those on an annual basis and get to those floor tile repairs and replacements. Also, a number of fleet vehicles are being proposed to be replaced. This is based on a schedule and maintaining a balanced fleet, as opposed to having all of our vehicles either brand new or relatively old. Changing these on a scheduled basis allows us to maintain a balanced fleet, which is certainly good practice in any asset management plan. We also have a few other items here. Obviously, a new snowplow is a considerable expense this year as well. On the next page, we have replacement and repair continued. So in total, this represents $2.2 million of our annual capital budget. We have in here one significant capital project that is being proposed is a large manhole replacement, which is called a drop manhole replacement, where basically this is responsible for pumping sewage out of the town to the Lou Romano facilities. So certainly it's a very significant and important project that is quite costly, but is being planned for 2021. The following page illustrates our enhancement category of the 2021 capital budget. So therefore, these are typically new items. And as you can see here, just to draw your attention, Councillor Desarlais, and all of council, to the picnic tables. So that's another $7,000 is listed here. So a total of $10,000 is planned for picnic tables. Some other interesting items to note. Again, the very first line is we plan to begin the pumping station upgrades with the DMAF grant that we received in 2021. The expenditures are planned to be $3 million. In total, the future commitments are another $34 million, of which the town is responsible for 60%, and the grant will cover the other 40%. On here as well, we have further enhancements, including the Cenotaph Park holiday display being proposed, a dog park. This dog park, the details contained within the budget, is planned to be basic with some bench and fencing. Furthermore, some environmental initiatives further down the list at the indoor facilities. That is basically sorting items or containers to sort between recycling and regular garbage. Sidewalk, a multi-purpose tractor. This tractor is being proposed. It has various attachments with it. It can be used for snow clearing, sweeping, things of that nature. So many different items are being proposed in the enhancement section of the project. As I mentioned earlier, the Vollmer tile and repair is planned over multiple years. So as you can see, there's an amount in the column for greater than 2021 to happen in the future years. So in total, $3.8 million in capital enhancements. It is a significant portion of the capital budget as well. And within Public Works, we have committed to the pumping station improvements, which total $37 million over the next 7 years approximately. The next phase of our capital budget discussion represented by grant dependent projects and those items that have not been recommended. So certainly we have some significant projects, Malden Road and Oliver Farms, that the town is actively applying for grants for whenever we can. And then there are a number of items that have been discussed but are not recommended at this time, which are listed at the bottom here as well on the right, in the right column. So certainly these items are not being proposed in the capital budget. Some of them are grant dependent, and we'll come back if should we be successful in any grant, and the others are not recommended at this time. So we have a question, sorry. Councilor Reno?
Thank you. The question is probably for Peter. In regards to the dressing room and hallway floor replacement, I honestly don't use that hallway, but I would like to know is if at this point, if there's any concerns for health and safety, if there's any tripping hazards or anything like this. I just want to make sure that it's not overlooked if it's dangerous.
Thank you. It's not a dangerous situation. It's an aesthetic issue. If council may be aware, probably about 2 to 3 years ago now, we replaced the rubber floor within the public washrooms. This next step is doing the hallways and into some of the dressing rooms and things of that nature. It's more of an aesthetic issue and not a safety issue.
I'm fine with that. Thank you very much.
So overall, this page, this slide indicates a summary of the capital budget for public works. In total, it's $12 million for 2021. The breakdown is shown in the pie chart here. And the future commitments are $34 million, which we discussed is basically the DMAF grant pumping station project that we are responsible for 60% of that share over the next 6 to 7 years. Again, evenly split typically between previously approved capital, annual spending, replacement and repair at 2.2 million, and the enhancements for this year at $3.8 million within the capital budget. Moving on to the Culture and Recreation Operating Department. Overall, the inflationary changes total $32,000. This is the net budget for Culture and Recreation. It is made up of many areas, but an overall net budget increase of $32,000. Typically, this increase across all the areas is in relation to wages and benefits, contractual increases. The Culture and Rec budget, we did not reduce the revenue budgets in Culture and Rec this year. In the event where we don't meet the revenue budgets for example, arenas, et cetera, in 2021, we will certainly continue to look for grants from the upper levels of government to help us through the COVID pandemic. And as I mentioned previously, if there's a deficit and no grants are available, which we are of course hoping there will be, the town has developed a healthy level of reserves, and we would fund deficits through the tax stabilization reserve, as well as certainly looking for any reduction in expenses throughout the year as we can. We certainly hope that activity will get back to normal at the Volmer as soon as possible, and as early, hopefully, as next year or in the following year after that. But in the meantime, we will certainly maintain a close eye on available grants and the operating budget, as well as expenses, and monitor those on a monthly basis. The details for Culture and Rec can be found on page 192 of the budget document. The capital budget within Culture and Recreation certainly contains one very exciting project. It is a project that will span many years. The Small Coast Waterfront Experience. Phase 2 is an enhancement, and it's committed to being $18 million. In July this year, council approved the phase 2, which was $18 million. It is planned to spend, we are planning to spend $10 million in 2021 and $8 million in 2022. As you may recall, in July, we are planning to issue some debt through that council report, and that will be done later in 2021, and it'll be done in 2 parts. So certainly phase 2 is projected to be about $18 million and of the Small Coast Waterfront Experience. Further, on the same project, as you can see, the next line says grant dependent. So additional $32 million is planned in the future for the Small Coast Waterfront. As I mentioned earlier on things that are grant dependent, we will continue to search for grants from upper levels of government to assist us in the cost with developing waterfront and future phases. There is one item within the capital budget that's not being recommended at this time, and that is the outdoor exercise equipment initiative. So certainly a very large portion of our capital budget this year is the Small Coast Waterfront Experience Phase 2. Councilor Reno?
Thank you, Tono. Just looking for a little more explanation of the debt that will be issued for the small coast. Is that to cover the 10 million that we see there, or that's for the balance?
Yep. So basically, it's going to be funded from various sources. A portion will be funded from our gas tax, a portion from development charges, and a portion from our pedestrian safety reserve, which would fund the pathways and whatnot through it. We plan on issuing two different debt issuances. The first being a 20 to 25 year debt issuance for $7 million. And then the second being a 5-year debt issuance for $5 million. The reason we're looking at issuing two different separate pieces of debt, just because it's the first year, we want to get quite a bit done. There's quite a bit of work done to get the marina operating in safe conditions, and the event center, and then also the museum and whatnot. So it's going to be a little bit costly this year. The second set of debt, which would be $5 million, we're going to issue that over 5 years. And the idea is every 5 years, once that debt's been paid off, to issue $5 million more worth of debt to do another large portion of the project. It could be give or take a year, but that's kind of the plan, so that we can continuously improve the park moving forward. But also, if we are successful in receiving grants, that could change the plan. Usually with grants, there's always a portion that the government funds, and then a portion that the town's required to fund. So we want to make sure that we have proper reserves in place to fund our portion of the project. Yep.
Supplementary. In the future, when we do issue that debt, will the payments be coming out of the capital budget, or will be coming out of the regular budget?
No, the payments, we work that into, so that master plan buildup right now, that we have, I think about $385,000 left that we've built up from previous years, plus the $210 million for this year. So that'll be a reallocation. So that debt will be funded from the operating budget. And then, like I said, with Infrastructure Ontario, when we issue debt, we're locked in to that rate for the entire term, which is great, because we know that annual cost isn't going to change once we lock it in. And like I said, right now, the interest rate's at historically low levels. I checked it last week; it was 2.27% for 25 years. So you can't, if you can lock that in for 25 years, you can't beat that rate. So we're trying to take advantage of that right now for sure.
Thank you very much.
So we'll move on to the fire services operating budget. And certainly details can be found on page 216 of the budget document. Fire services represents about 9% of the overall town budget at 3.7 million proposed for 2021. The inflationary changes, again, almost all of it is from contractual wage and benefit increases, small increases in some administrative expense accounts. The service level changes were discussed, I think, a few slides ago by Mr. Langlois. Again, it's the 10-year plan to build up the fire master plan at $200,000 a year. So certainly, again, $3.7 million and 9% of the operating budget. And by building up the $200,000 annually, it allows us to smooth out and pre-plan for the increase in cost at the fire services area. The capital budget for fire services includes 3 items: command vehicle, exterior door painting for the fire hall to maintain professional appearance, as well as the 4th year of our mobile fire unit payment, that which is classified as an enhancement, whereas the other 2 are classified as replacements and repairs. So a $78,000 capital budget for fire proposed for 2021. The non-departmental portion of our operating budget totals 3.1 million. That is approximately 7% of the overall budget, and totals 3.1 for 2021. And this is comprised mainly of items such as the IRCA, garbage disposal and collection, street lighting costs, as well as transit costs. So our inflationary changes here are, again, IRCA $20,000, an increase in collection and disposal of garbage of $70,000, and some street lighting and transit costs totaling $30,000 between the two of them. The one service level change will be some additional operating costs of our new traffic controllers, which are included in the budget as well. Details can be found on page 225.
Thanks, Mr. Ferrero. So that brings us to the conclusion of the details of our budget there. This slide was placed up on the screen at the beginning of the presentation that kind of summarizes everything. Again, the inflationary changes, the changes from the police services, our long-term capital increase, and then our service level and growth related changes. They're really, again, this operating budget is the bare minimum. There's been a lot of thought by all the departments putting this together and reducing costs and increases as much as possible to keep the tax rate increase below the rate of inflation. And then it also, an important thing, all while doing that, it allows us to move forward with our capital plan and also with our large new initiative on Front Road. So this kind of summarizes everything. The proposed tax rate change is 1.95%. But then again, we always have to remember that there is no increase on people's property values. So the average bill is going to be a lot less than it was the last number of years, probably the last 7 or 8 years. So the final slide that I have here is just the budget summary looking at the overall tax rate. So first row, we have our proposed municipal tax rate change of 1.95%. It shows the change year over year on $100,000 of assessment, which is $18.84. The county tax rate change, which was approved a couple weeks ago, at just under 0.5%. And then the education tax rate change, that's an estimate at this point in time. For the past number of years, I think it's been probably about 12 years, it's been a 4% decrease per year. But I'm expecting that probably to discontinue this year just because there is no change in the assessment on existing properties. So that would be hard to accomplish. Just kind of the same situation that we have here at the town of LaSalle and everywhere else with the property values not changing. That puts more pressure on the tax rate. So we're assuming that that's going to be a 0% change with an overall estimated tax rate change of 1.32%. That's what we're looking at. So just some closing comments. This budget is bare bones. It's allowing us to continue with our initiatives. We're taking our foot off the gas a little bit with our capital contributions just to kind of help our residents out, keep the tax rate less than inflation. But you know, we're not letting that gap, that funding gap for infrastructure get any bigger. And then we're also continuing, this allows us to continue to move forward with the Front Road Small Coast project. Again, I'd like to thank all the departments for their efforts and every part of this budget. And then, you know, Mr. Ferraro thanked IT earlier in the presentation. You know, I completely lost track of that. You know, with all the changes with COVID and work from home and all that, it'd be very difficult to do what we're doing right now without IT. and they're behind the scenes a lot, but they are a big part of our organization and have done a lot of work and a lot of really good work in a short period of time to help us out as this crisis has gotten worse over the past month or so. So next, we'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Thank you, Mr. Langlois. I think Mr. Reno has a question for you. Dale, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's not so much a question as a comment and a thank you to our Mayor Mark Bondi and Deputy Mayor Krista Malash. You know, as we saw in our previous slides for our own administration, the biggest challenges to keeping that tax rate down seem to be things like roads and sewers and all that hard infrastructure, which is what the county is probably the majority of their expenses are that way. And the ability to keep that down to 0.5% helps blend our rate and keep our rate even lower. So thank you to the two of you for doing your hard work with the county level to help the town of LaSalle.
Thank you, Jeff, for the comments. I see no other questions from council. Mr. Militia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, depending on what the direction of council is, we can take a 5-minute break. If we'd like to do that, I see some nodding heads around the screen. And so why don't we take a 5-minute break? We'll be back at, we will continue the broadcast, but there will be a slide that'll be put on the screen that will indicate that we'll be back shortly. So I would suggest if we can be back here back online and active at 10 after 11. That'll give us just a bit of time just to regroup. And then at that point, we'll be available for anything, again, any questions that council may have, as well as any direction that council may be wanting to give at that point in time. I would, again, just while we're on break, I would ask that members of council mute their device as well as stop the video, just so that there's no inadvertent commentary that's received or anything like that. We've had, again, thankfully we haven't had that, but there have been some embarrassing moments that have been unfortunate. So if we could just get folks to mute their mics and stop their videos, and then we'll be back here at 11:10.
Joe, it's Mark. Don't start till you see my picture. Rick Nichols called me and he's told me to call him ASAP. He had good news, so I'm going to call him right now.
Mark, your mic is still on.
Okay. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, if you would, we can recommence the meeting. I believe all members of council are back online again, as well as members of the finance team, as well as again, you won't see the cameras, but the department head team is also available for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Dale, you ready to go at it again?
We're ready.
All right, it's all yours.
Well,
At this point, Mr. Mayor, in the budget sessions, we are available for questions, any further questions from members of council. We do have, again, the proposed budget has been identified as a 1.95% municipal increase. When combined with the county and education rates, the blended rate is about 1.3% is what the overall rate is. And so we are available for questions at this point and at some point direction with respect to the budget.
Councilor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. I hate to put you guys on the spot, but I know that Dale is really good with a calculator. Dale, if we were to put our capital contribution back to the 600,000 level, what would our blended rate end up being with the county and other?
give me 1 second.
Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Just knowing that in past budgets, we approved that, and knowing that moving forward, capital, it's just a never-ending growing pile. I appreciate it going down. I just wanted to know if we were to put that back, what kind of blended rate we'd be looking at.
For sure. So if we added 300,000, our municipal rate would go up 0.8%. So just give me 2 seconds. Okay, Mr. Ferraro, he has a Excel spreadsheet that will automatically populate that.
Sorry, I had blanked out for a second there. What was that rate again? I'm sorry.
I know, yeah.
And I'm okay if you want to take another question and come back to it.
Okay, we can do that. Tano, you can chime in as soon as you have that figure calculated.
Council questions? I'm not seeing any, so we'll wait for Dale and Tano. Just so you know, Dale, your 2 seconds are over.
It's a long 2 seconds.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Carrick.
Yeah, thank you. So the process here, delegations coming up next. Do we have delegations? Did I see that right or wrong?
We do not believe that there's no delegations at this point, nor has there been any that have registered to speak. I will just, I know that the deputy clerk is on the line, but just to confirm, I do not believe that we've received any requests with respect to delegations at this point.
Yes, you're right, Joe. There have been no requests, no formal submissions received.
Okay, thank you.
The overall tax rate change would be approximately 1.8%.
So just to be clear with the question, Councilor Reno, adding back or getting back to what our original plan was on the capital contributions would be about $300,000, which is just under a 1% tax rate increase for the municipal side. So it's about 8.8% on the municipal side. When we blend that all together, our overall increase would go from 1.3% to 1.8%. That would be the blended overall increase as we go through that. So that gives, again, you actually caught us by surprise, because it's not often council wants to add back into the budget. So we're usually working the other way, not this way. So again, from that perspective, we would go back to, again, an overall increase of about 1.8% overall.
Joe, that's our way of keeping you guys on your toes. Are you good with that answer, Mr. Reno, Councilor Reno?
I am very much. I just know that it seems like these numbers were a little bit better than what we were looking at a few weeks ago when we projected. So I just wanted to know how much that would change things from what we've been kind of preparing the public for. So thank you for that answer, and sorry to put you on the spot again.
That's okay. Originally, the reason the overall estimate went down a little bit, originally we estimated the county rate change to be at 1%, and it came in lower. So that affects the bottom line, the overall tax rate estimate.
So all that extra work is the mayor's fault, is what you're saying. Thank you.
It's okay. I'll take the blame. I'm getting used to that. I don't see any council questions. So do you want to bring in police and dispatch?
Oh, Councillor Ekpeta.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Ekpat. I didn't see you up there in the corner.
That's all right, Your Worship. Mine's a procedural question. If we have questions on what have been presented so far, then Mr. Militia, we'll wait till the actual components of the budget presentation to bring them up. Or I just want to make sure that I don't derail the process as it's supposed to go with an improperly timed question.
Well, maybe let me just start by saying there's never an improperly timed question. So let me just start with that. But again, because of, again, our online or virtual budget sessions, we've elected to, we have all the department heads on standby, but the traditional, again, each department head coming forward and presenting their budget. We've elected to go with more of a streamlined focus, and that's what Mr. Ferraro went through earlier in the morning. So we are, again, at this point, any questions are available either to the finance team or to the department head team as well. So we are at that point in the meeting. Subsequent to any other of those questions that may be coming forward, we would look towards direction. Again, our recommendation to council is the proposed budget number. If there are modifications that council would like to make to those, again, at this point, we'd be available to discuss those and provide some input on those as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. So then maybe this is appropriate, Your Worship, sure. And if it's not, just direct me accordingly. I like what Mr. Reno has done with the $300,000 for capital, but I'm just looking at the Public Works capital budget, and perhaps, Mr. Militia, you could enlighten me. If we were to remove the cenotaph light display for $330 and then put Mr. Reno's suggestion back in, would that have an impact, a positive impact, or a zero change, if I'm understanding my accounting procedures correctly?
So the funding for the holiday lights display, I believe, is coming out of a reserve. I'm just looking over to the finance team. So again, removal of that from the capital budget will not have an impact on the tax rate, whereas the increasing of the amount that Mr. Reno had asked earlier would have a positive, meaning an increase in the tax rate. So at this point, I think I know where you're getting to. You're trying to offset the one with the other, but unfortunately, because of how we get through that process, we don't. Again, it's not the one-for-one that you're looking for.
All right. Well, Your Worship, again, then again, if this is appropriate, I understand Mr. Militia's explanation, and I still have a concern with the Cenotaph Park lights. If this is the appropriate time to bring it up, sir.
There's no inappropriate time, so go ahead, Councillor Ekpata.
Well, like I said, the 330,000, and I appreciate what admin has done on keeping a tight budget. I do. There's just a few things that in the public works capital budget that, even though they will not offset the tax rate, as Mr. Militia has clearly articulated, that I just have some concerns with. The Cenotaph Park holiday lights, I have concerns with, and I'd like to see that removed. I think that we can probably find some uses for those dollars internally. As well, I'd like a better explanation, if it's appropriate, on the sidewalk multi-purpose tractor as well. I understand what a tractor would do. I'm just thinking that there might be some other ways that we could get the same tasks done in a more efficient manner without that expenditure.
Good question, Councillor Ekpata. Mr. Militia.
Perhaps if we can just deal with those two items separately.
Yes, sir.
So I would ask Mr. Mara to answer the question with respect to the tractor. And then if you would like, again, subsequent to that, if Councillor Ekpata would like to make a motion to reduce the capital budget by reducing the holiday display, and that way that will get that process going with respect to how we handle that going forward.
Thank you. So I'll take the sidewalk multi-purpose tractor. Probably about 5 or 6 years ago, council will be aware that there was a request to increase and or start doing sidewalk snow clearing within the town. The Town of LaSalle Public Works Administration came forward with how best to achieve that in establishing what priorities there may be with respect to sidewalk snow clearing. A few years back, we had budgeted for purchasing one of these specialty tractors. They are a specialty type of equipment that is specifically sized for a 5-foot wide sidewalk. Ironically, since we've implemented the policy, we have not experienced very significant snowfalls to kind of test it out and try out these situations. So at one point in time, instead of purchasing it back 3 or 4 years ago, I believe we factored in some money for that. We did some rentals and trials of various pieces of equipment to ensure that what we were purchasing would be appropriate for the use, to ensure staff were comfortable with using things of that nature. So certainly over the years, we have made do with the equipment we have available to us. In most instances, the equipment that we have is inappropriate for the sidewalks, the 5-foot wide sidewalks. Typically, we are going down with a plow that is wider than the sidewalks and removing landscaping, grass, things of that nature. So this is coming forward this year because, again, as we continue to go down the path of sidewalk snow clearing and potentially any future increases to that level of service, which aren't being brought forward this year, but certainly we have been requested numerous times to continue to expand that. In future year budgets, we will. This is just a piece of equipment to help with that. With respect to utilizing that piece of equipment, it is really a multi-purpose tractor, which has multiple attachments. So for instance, we can place a snow plate, a snow blade on the front of it with a salter on the back in the winter time. And then in the summertime, we can put a cutting mower or a cutting head on it, or a front end front end bucket to pick up and move material. So that's really what you see is a combination of the number of the base unit tractor along with multi-purpose equipment, so that we can use this piece of equipment year round instead of just buying something specific for the winter. So that's why you see what you see in front of you today. Certainly, if it was something that is in the budget, these things don't get delivered in short time frames, so it's probably not something that will come in handy for this year. Certainly, we will make an attempt to try to get it before winter ends this year, but certainly it's an item that has been on the town's radar to dealing with the current policy with respect to sidewalk snow clearing.
Thank you, sir. I understand now. Then simply based on the advice I've been given, your worship, I'd make a motion to remove the Cenotaph Park holiday display from the 2021 proposed capital budget.
Okay, so we have a mover. Councillor Edicio Spagnolo seconds. All in favor of removing that from capital? Or on the motion? Any discussion? Sorry. Councillor Reno, then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Your Worship. When this came to council about a month ago, it was something that I had supported. I supported putting the lights down there. We were in the middle of an increasing COVID number, and we didn't know what it would look like. And I appreciate council's decision at the time of not putting it in this year, because you know what, with all our restriction changes, it might have been a bit of a waste of money for this year. But I have to say that last weekend, my wife and I donned our masks and took a ride south to Amherstburg. And we safely distanced ourselves. We safely walked around the River Lights compound, we'll just for choice of better words. And, you know, it really was a wonderful feeling. People were out there being safe and sharing in the holiday season. And you know what? I just think over the years, that's something that we're missing out in LaSalle. Unfortunately, this year we've canceled event after event, sometimes in very short order. And I just really think this is an initiative that would give back to our town. And I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. I have Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Reno. We've asked for an increase to our Christmas displays for years. We had it obviously presented to us this year, and this wasn't the year to take advantage of it. But because the funds are coming from a reserve and not affecting our bottom line budget today, I would like to see us go forward with the display, because this is something, like I said, we want to build it up. We want the town of LaSalle to be somewhere where our residents go to our own light displays and aren't driving east or west or north or south to visit everyone else. So I'm also not going to support that motion today, just as I'm looking at the bottom line budget, and it's not kind of affecting what we're looking to do today.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Councillor Carrick, did you have something to add?
Just a point of order.
Okay.
Just so we're following the guidelines here, are we debating the budget now, or are we going to go through department heads review and capital budgets? Just so I'm clear. So I know we're going with the process here.
I'll let Councillor or Mr. Militia answer that one.
We are at the point where we are debating the budget at this point in time. Again, we are also open for questions if council has any, but we are at the point where we are basically answering questions and taking direction from council with respect to the budget or any changes to it.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yes, that brings me up to speed. Thank you very much.
Okay.
In regards to this issue, I didn't support the tree back there. So at this present time, I would like to see it spread out over 2 years built in, if we can, as opposed to taking a little lump sum. So I won't support this motion either.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. I was going to question the same thing. Rather than spend $330,000 in one fell swoop out of the tax stabilization fund, is there a way that we could do it over this year and next year? Or is there something more pressing that we need to take that money from the tax stabilization fund?
I'm going to let Mr. Militia answer that one.
Again, on the two-part question, a two-part answer to the question. On the first side, if council desires, again, our opinion and recommendation is that if we are going to do the holiday lights display, we should try to do as much as we can. And part of that is, and again, I would turn to Mr. Mara in terms of the exact figures, but of the 330 amount that's in the budget currently, in the capital budget currently, approximately half of that relates to the tree by itself, or just a little less than half of that relates to the tree. So we can break it up into 2 stages, and we can certainly do that. But again, it would likely be tree purchase in year 1 or year 2, however we want to order them, and then all the other displays would happen in the subsequent year, or we would front load it, however we determine appropriately. But because of the value of the tree, that's why you see the recommendation before you to say we should probably do it all at once. Again, I just turned to Mr. Mara to confirm the values that I'm quoting.
Yes, that is correct. Mr. Militia has summarized that. And we've looked at this as a staged approach as well. What we didn't want to do was have a bit of a half-baked pie out in the cenotaph area. So we didn't want to put some displays out there and not really fill the space and or provide an experience that others are experiencing elsewhere. So that's why we went with the process of providing it in a 1-year venture to kind of do what we can and put our best foot forward at the get-go when we first roll this out, because it is brand new for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Is there not a timeline as well? If you wanted this for next Christmas, we have to order now? Mr. Militia.
I think Mr. Mara would probably be able to.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, a lot of the displays are specialty in nature, and certainly the sooner we get the decision made on what we want to proceed with, and the sooner we can get our order in, we can ensure ourselves to getting the various pieces and items that we want to display out there. So it is a bit of a time crunch, or to make sure that we get our order in. Certainly, they are a lot of specialty items with respect to what we're proposing. So it will take some time to manufacture and ensure that we get it here for next year's display.
Mr. Militia.
Again, the second part of Councillor Desjardins' question with respect to the use of funds. Again, from our perspective, again, we've heard from council and members of the community that much like the comments that Mr. Reno has put forward, in that, you know, there is a desire to have some type of holiday display in the town of LaSalle. And so, again, understanding that is what was the will of some members of council and some members of the community, we've put forward this package. Again, we did this in, I believe it was August of 2020, to try to fast track it. Admittedly, it was an increasing time crunch for us in a normal year, I will call it. In a COVID year, it became exponentially more difficult. And at that time, council had elected to defer it. And so that's why you find it on the budget document this year for the 2021 holiday season that we would have perhaps a year or 11 months from now. So again, it's from a use of funds perspective, this is a council directed initiative that we're investigating and putting forward as part of the budget. We're recommending that, again, what we hear from a promotional perspective and from a community perspective, that there is this desire to have this, but understanding that, you know, council may have, you know, will ultimately make the decision as to whether or not this actually goes forward.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Just my own comments. I agree with Councillor Reno and Deputy Mayor Meloche. We're doing the waterfront because that was demanded by us years ago. People wanted a destination, and we can make this a destination so people can come to our downtown core, if you will, our civic center, and drive by or walk over, depending on the weather, and support our local small businesses. We know every small business is hurting. It's been in discussion with funds coming from the government. The other provinces are closing down sections of Walmart and Costco where you can go in and buy your essentials. But if you want to go buy some clothing or something that's not essential, then you can go support the small businesses. That's not happening. I know it's a hard decision now. We're in the midst of a great lockdown, but looking down the road, I'm thinking, what better way to celebrate, and this is going to be in our Cenotaph Park, to not only recognize the veterans, to bring more attention to our monument and the respect, and educate the people who come when they go to the park. They say, nice tree, but what's this, Mom? What's this, Dad? And they can educate the children. So I look at it as, if we can bring more to our civic center, to our veterans, to bring attention to what they've done and what's happening, and hopefully we're gone with this COVID by next Christmas, I think it would be a great way to celebrate and commemorate everyone involved. So unless there's any comments, more discussion, I'll bring it to a vote. Councillor Edicio Spagnolo.
I think I'm going to change my my vote if that's okay, or my mind on this. I didn't agree with the cost of $330,000. However, if it's coming from reserves, then I am okay with it going towards a holiday display. I was thinking more that it would go towards the waterfront when the waterfront was completed. However, I am echoing the thoughts of Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Reno, that it is needed. And I think that a lot of families will gather there. I think I was just a little bit worried with a COVID year and this high cost. But I mean, I have a young family too, and we do take the ride to Amherstburg or Bright Lights. And I think it was a wrong choice for me to say that. So I do want to change that. And I think that it's a great idea to go ahead with it. So I will support the decision to go with it.
Okay, Councillor Edicio Spagnolo, thank you for your comments. Councillor, Mr. Militia, procedurally, what do we do here?
Exactly. And I was just.
Councillor Clara might have a comment.
With lack of support for my motion, Your Worship, I will withdraw it.
Okay, there you have it. So is that okay, Joe, procedurally?
Again, I believe that, again, if the motion is withdrawn, obviously it cannot be voted on. And that would, just so we're clear, that will result in that line item remaining in the budget.
Correct. Everybody's aware of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're good to go. Okay, are there any more council questions at this time? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Through you to, I'm thinking maybe Dale or possibly Tano. Obviously, like you've said, it is a bare bones budget. There really isn't much we can take out to change the number that's put in front of us. And it is a good number compared to other municipalities. My question would be, if the blended rate is 1.32, what would it mean to our budget if we wanted to make the blended rate a 1? I don't know if that's a really hard calculation that maybe we have to get back to later. I'm not sure how that works. I was trying to look at numbers myself, and honestly, it just wasn't working. So
Tano has a spreadsheet. Sorry, Mr. Ferrero has a spreadsheet. He can figure that out for us. In the meantime, I believe Councillor Carrick has a question.
Thank you. So again, these are unprecedented times, and I'm having a hard time even coming to the grips that I want to support the budget as it's presented, because I think, and I get how hard we've gotten to get to this point, but overall, I mean, there's not much more we can do other than maybe look at what the deputy mayor has just said. But there's no things like, and I don't want to pick on anything, but if you look at the council, our budget, mayor and council, even leaving our budget the same as it was last year, understand that none of us are probably going on conferences this year. So if we took $1,000 off each stipend, that would get us down to what's even for last year. So we're not going up. Little things like that, I think, go a long way, even though it's a one part of the small portion of what we're dealing with. But I think if we were to keep our budget the same as it was last year, as opposed to even going up, especially for council, I think that's a good example. And it's not much money, but it's the overall perception of what we have to deal with. As far as going up north, I'm not doing that. I will stay where we're at, or maybe even a little less. I could support that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Langlois.
So to answer Deputy Mayor Malash's question, to get to an overall estimated increase of 1%, our tax rate change would have to be an increase of 1.4%, which would be a reduction of $207,000 in the budget, which is really difficult to find.
Deputy Mayor Malash, you're thinking.
no, I was hoping he was going to come up with a lower number than that. I went through the budget line by line, and I know what he's saying. I know there's nothing to take out. And as much as I would love to see an overall rate increase of 1% instead of the 1.32%, I have to be realistic on what the town is facing right now and really what we're facing next year. And that's my biggest concern too, is to cut things out and then be in dire need of things next year when we're faced with a lot of unknowns for next year. So I was trying to get to that 1% overall estimated blended rate, but myself personally, I'm going to vote in favor of what's been presented to us today.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to make a motion now?
Sure. I'll make a
Okay,
motion that we move ahead with the increase of 1.95% municipal tax rate with an overall blended rate of 1.32.
okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Reno, you second the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to thank Deputy Malash for trying to get that down to 1.0. I think she was hoping that Tono would come back and say like $2,500 cash, but unfortunately, you know what? With a $37 million budget, these numbers don't move that easily. And with the budget that's presented to us, you know, I too went right through it going, you know, what's in there that can change. And really, I think in your entire presentation this morning, I think I saw maybe 3 want lines that didn't total very much at all. And even the changing of the council stipend, you know, I understand we're not using it. And that money will probably just end up, the stuff we didn't use this year will go back into a reserve that'll end up being used in the future. To change our budget because of it, to make face with a number, it's not going to make a big enough change, and it's not going to help us down the road when we have to put that hole back in the budget, or that, not the hole, but the number back in the budget in the future, and we have to explain why it's going back in, and the cost of conferences and all that kind of stuff. I think it was a good question, and I am supporting this budget as written because I think it was very well written. The mayor asked me 3 weeks ago what I thought when I got the book, and I told him very quickly. I thought it was very fair, very thoughtful. And even on my earlier comment about trying to put the 300,000 back in to restore our commitment to those funds, I don't want to do that and put us above what we have prepared people to pay. I don't want any more surprises. I think a nice little surprise of going down is good, and I will, again, support the budget as presented and support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. Councillor Carrick.
Okay, thanks. So overall, I again struggled with this like everybody else has because we've had 0 the last 2 years. So I guess if you blend the 3 years into this year's budget, it's been what, roughly 7.7%. I think, I'm guessing, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more of the last 3 years that we blended of what we've done since the start of this election going into next year. Having said that, though, we still need to, and I get it, we still need to look at, we're in a pandemic, people are losing their jobs, losing their income. It's very sad, and I don't want to be the bearer of bad news or anything, but it's stuff we all know and what we can see. So with a churning stomach, because I'd like to see a lot lower, and I understand, but that's not possible at this present time, I will support the budget as it's presented as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. I'm in agreement with my colleagues. It's a tough year, and I think, unfortunately, I think 2021 is going to be a bad year for us as well. So I love Christmas, and as long as this is coming out of tax stabilization, I'm okay with the lights. Thank you, Joe and Peter. I think we're actually putting in a few things that people have been asking for over the years: more picnic tables, more the dog park. I think that's something that's been on the radar for a while. I think that we have to make the best use of what we have right now. This really is bare bones. And again, like everybody, we've gone through this line by line, and there's not really anywhere to cut. So that being said, and with what Councillor Carrick said, if you take it over the last 3 years, if you average it, it's less than 1%. It's like 0.7 something. So I think moving forward that this is a budget that we can accept, we can work with. I think our residents will understand what we're trying to do and where we're coming from. And we'll hope that 2021 is a better year for all of us, and not so many, hopefully not so many tight ends.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. Councillor Ridicio Spagnolo.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues here, and I know it's been a tough year for many people and many families. But I've went through this as well, the budget, and there's not very many areas to cut. I find that finance did a fantastic job with this. So I will support this as well.
Thank you. Councillor Akpata, you just unmuted.
Thank you, Your Worship. I feel like that Dr. Seuss character, Mr. Militia the Grinch. While I listened to my colleagues and I heard Mr. Carrick speak, I can't support this budget. And I realize that, please, that the team has done an outstanding job. I just believe that this is the time, sooner or later, we have to make tough decisions. The tougher decisions shall not become easier. And with great respect to the work that's been put in, I will not be able to support this budget as proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Akpata. A question, I might catch Mr. Longwell or Mr. Ferraro offside here, but just for a round figure, what would the average assessment be in LaSalle, or do we have one?
I'd be guessing if I gave you a number at this point. I think it's probably about $400,000, $350,000. There's been a lot of houses being built right now are very expensive houses. So I think probably between $350,000 and $400,000 when you take all the properties together.
Okay, let's use the 400,000 number. If that's the average, you're looking at less than $100 for the year. And
that's correct.
Okay, and I appreciate, we have an award-winning budget team again. Mr. Ferraro, thank you. This is how many years in a row? 4 or 5? And I'm sorry?
I believe it has been 4 or 5 years. That's correct.
Okay. Well, welcome to the award-winning team. This is not an easy process. The amount of hours, forget hours, days, weeks that Dale and your team have put together to put this budget to make it workable is outstanding. I know I've been talking to Dale probably since January 1 of this year saying, what's our budget? What's our budget? I want it 0. I want 0. And he says, and then when COVID hit, he says, we can't make 0. So facts are facts. Everybody has a budget. Where do you want to take it out of? I don't think there is anywhere to take it out of responsibly. We can cut to reserves and we can do the old, let's just keep it low. Let's go with 0 again by taking out where we shouldn't take it out. And then we can go on the press and say, hey, we're at 0. That doesn't do the future generations any favor. There's a motto I live by. There's never a wrong time to do the right thing. We're doing the right thing. And it's not the wrong time. Now's the time, and it's difficult to do the right thing. It's not popular. You're going to get people, oh my God, my taxes are going up. Yes. Next year, we have a big battle to look at if the impact assessment comes in. And we don't know if they're going to change it before they bring that in. With all due respect to everyone on council, everybody in administration, this is not an easy decision. It's we're going to live with it. And hopefully 2021 brings us more relief from everything. So if we take an average $100 per year on a home, the average home, and if someone's losing their house, with all due respect, I don't think $100 is going to tip them over on a yearly basis. If it was monthly, that might be different. So those are my comments before we vote on this, unless somebody else has anything to add. We have a mover and a seconder. All in favor of the budget as recommended? 3, 4, 5. Against, if any? Councillor Akpata. That carries. Just for the record, I did vote in favor. So thank you, everyone. So, Mr. Militia, does that change our agenda for the day?
Again, for today, I think given council's direction, we will wrap up for today. I will remind council, because we do have an advertised meeting for tomorrow. starting at 9:30, and it is to deal with the report with respect to the Small Coast waterfront project. So we do it. There is obviously the agenda has been prepared and released. It is available on our website, but we did advertise for that meeting tomorrow. So we will begin tomorrow at 9:30 with that presentation. We do have invited guests to do some presenting for us as well. So that will happen tomorrow at 9:30.
Okay.
As a reminder, again, and so we will wrap up for today. Again, we do thank members of council for taking the time to go through the budgets and for all the positive comments that we've gotten back from members of council with respect to the work that we do. Again, it's part of our job, but it is also nice to be recognized for it as well. I will admit to that. Also, again, for the listening public as well as members of council, in case we don't see you, although we will see you tomorrow. Happy holiday seasons, Merry Christmas to all.
Don't leave yet. We have to do the confirmatory bylaw. Okay, so we need 3 readings on the confirmatory bylaw. On the first reading, Councillor Reno and Councillor Edicio Spagnolo, all in favor? That carries. Second reading, moved by Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Desjardins, all in favor? That carries. And on the third and final reading, we have Councillor Carrick and Councillor Akpata, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Everybody have a good day, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning at 9:30.